Good morning, everybody. How we doing this morning?
Sorry, I had to get down low because I don't think the camera's that high. Good
All
morning,
right.
I'm Mike Z with Clink Sports Woodworking Shop.
Finally, Mike's on my level. This is Chris.
And today, welcome to Abrasive and Proud of It Live. Today, we're going to talk about proper sanding technique. So we have a piece of maple here. We have all of our discs in both of our Festool hole patterns because we are in the Festool corral today. So what we want to tell you is basically just a couple of things that you could do at home in the shop.
You look uncomfortable.
I'm not. I feel like I'm
okay.
ready to like pounce though
Okay.
this low. But we would just want to go over a few things that maybe will help you get better sanding practices, not have to worry about it when you get into the finishing room. So like if your pad's wearing out, the actual hooks on the back are wearing out quicker. Let's see, what are some other things? If your actual pad itself, the foam, is starting to wear down or starting to get chunky, you might be in proper sanding. What are some other things?
Yeah, we're just going to cover, look at those swirl marks, how to kind of see proper technique and understanding what that is, because proper technique can make a world of difference in the final outcome of your product. And you sometimes won't see it until you apply that stain or apply that finish. And at that point, you're kind of sold and stuck with what you have, unless you sand it all down.
So it's also good to know too that we have there's different patterns for sanding. Some are oscillations, some are random orbit. What does that mean? Is it which one's the right one for you? So today we're going to cover some of those things on it. I'm going to let you take over though. I'll go work the camera in the comments and let you know.
All right.
See you on the other side.
Hey, so you'll see a lot of people using these, and we'll kind of cover a quick basic on the right sander for your application. You'll see your traditional random orbit. They look something like this. You'll see more of that angle grinder body style like this, and then you'll see your typical square sheet, also known as a finishing sander. So really, there's no one sander to do it all. And I know that's kind of being vague, but it's true. An aggressive sander like this, even though it's got two modes of orbit to it, it's not going to do everything you need. A sander like this isn't going to do everything you need. And you certainly can't be aggressive with a sander like this. This is really known as a finishing sander. So picking the right sander out of the gate is just as crucial as picking the right abrasive or the right technique itself. So understanding the basics between the two or the options, most of these sanders, the dual mode type sanders, are going to have a 3/16 and a 3/8 random orbit option. The 3/8 obviously is more aggressive than the 3/16. So if you imagine a normal sander, if it's rotating, when you add that random orbit pattern to that, the 3/16 is much tighter, so it's going to leave you a much finer result. Whereas the 3/8 is much more aggressive, and that's going to translate into more scratches. But it's also going to help in your heavier removal stages, especially if you're trying to flatten a glue up or something like that. So understanding that's going to be a benefit. And most of your standard random orbits are going to have a 3/16 orbit. That's why they are the most commonly found everywhere. Then when you migrate over to your sheet sanders, sometimes these sheet sanders are just linear, meaning they only move in one direction, back and forth. Sometimes it's an oscillation movement where you're getting a slight oscillation as it goes all the way around. And that's really going to help you when it comes to the finishing stage, because typically that oscillation is much tighter. So picking the right machine, this obviously uses sheets. This is able to use PSA, or you can use the standard sheet material and clip it in the corner. So whatever you go with, knowing that the square is finishing, these are for typical use. So let's take a look at how that would work.
Could you draw on a piece of wood the orbit real quick, kind of give them an idea of what oscillating orbit means?
So if this is, it's going to oscillate in a random pattern back and forth. Well, a 3/8 orbit is going to be or a 3/16 orbit is going to be very tight. A 3/8 orbit is going to be more like that first drawing that I did, where it's really random and it's really goes outside of that boundary. Imagine 3/8 literally oscillation from side to side. That's going to create a much more aggressive pattern. Whereas the 3/16 is very tight as it goes around that pattern. So my artistic impression is not good, but I'm a woodworker, not an architect or an artist. So, well, it's the only excuse I have. So today we've got our SAM pack out, our sample pack that's got the whole array, and you can see we cover from 60 to 600. On this particular piece of maple, I don't know if the camera's picking it up. It does have some tool marks, but you can also see some really nice figure in this piece. So we thought this would be a good choice to sort of lay out here and do a demo on. So the first thing you want to do is obviously you want to kind of flatten it as much as possible on joiner, planer, resaw it on a bandsaw, whatever you can do to get it as flat as possible to start with. It'll save you a ton of time. But once you're ready to start your sanding, I typically like to get some pencil marks on there just to give me some reference. And that is not an earthquake. That is our shipping department. Yeah, receiving department. All right, so let me see. I don't have the back hooked up to this, so this could get real fun. So we'll just have fun without the back today. All right, so I'm going to put this. This is in standard mode because I don't think for this piece I need that real aggressive. I do have the 60 grit, I believe. Nope, I've got the 80 grit on here, but this 80 grit AZ Plus should be more than sufficient to kind of get these pencil marks off. And I want to preface all of this with this. A lot of people spend a ton of time on the finer grits. If you do about 80 or 90% of your work with your first grit, everything else is cake because the bulk of your removal, the bulk of your surfacing is all done with your first grit. So spend that extra time making sure that the surface is flat. And you'll notice when I'm sanding, I'm going to do a certain technique. Okay, so my grain is running this way. I'm going to go against the grain and I'm going to overlap about a third each pass. And when I get to the end, especially on my first grit, I may come back again doing the same thing. And when I reach the beginning, then I'm going to go with the grain, overlapping at least a third again. So kind of pay attention to that technique because that's very important because you see a lot of people doing this and you see a lot of people doing this. Well, that translates into dips in your workpiece, especially if you're hot wheeling it like that. So keeping that flat, if you got a dip in an area, you need to surface the entire thing or it's going to translate into a bad finish. So let's see what we got. So I don't know if you can see down there, the light's reflecting on that or not. But that should be very flat because all the pencil marks are gone, and I went through it twice because I did notice there was a little area here and a little area here. So now that we've got our board flat, and you notice I am cleaning that surface off before I go to the next grit. Very important. So I've done 80. I can skip 100 and I will step up to the 120. This is the Green Tech 120 on the paper backing. I'm lining up my holes and I don't know why since we don't have the vacuum hooked up to it, but that's okay. Good habit, good form. Now I shouldn't have to work near as hard using the 120 as I did the 60. because I've got it flat. Yeah, the 80. I apologize. So now we've gone from 80 to 120. Here we go. It's always good if you can, and we don't have that luxury here, to have a light at your workbench. Not a light shining straight down, but a light shining across the grain. That helps you see any potential swirls as you go so you can correct them while you're working. So 120 down. At this point, I can skip from 120 to either 150 or 180 on this application for this maple. I think I'm going to go straight to the 180. Excuse me. Okay, so check that in the light. That looks pretty good. Excuse me. Yeah, be nice with it. I live on the edge. So at this point, we could be potentially ready for finish. I think we have a festival light somewhere around here we could probably use to showcase proof that's charged up.
You have the assist light on. Check yourself on that.
Yeah. Yeah, a good LED is always important, and I think we could stop at the 180 based on what I'm seeing, but it might be a benefit to hit that with the 220. But
so since you've done it properly, do you think we could do it improperly?
Sure.
We'll stain both.
Yep. We've got another board, or I could flip that over. All right, so I'm going to mark this one with a little check mark. Good. Now, let's go back to that original grip of 80. And I'm going to show you some typical techniques that I've seen people do. These are not exaggerations. These are, in fact, what I've seen people do in the field. We've been into a lot of commercial accounts, and I assure you, I have seen people do that because it's all about speed when you're in the field. So now, one of the problems you have when you tip that up is, one, you're creating more of a dip. Two, you're wearing out your pad on the edge. And so what happens when you do that on the edge, you start to have a pad that's no longer flat. The edges start to curl up. So when you try to do flat work, you don't get that because your pad is worn. It also wears the fingers out on your hook and loop on your pad, so you don't get good adhesion. And so over time, as you do that, you can start slinging discs across the surface. So we've got the 80 done. Now it's the 120. So we'll kind of do that similar process. I'll be a little more conservative with it though. So there's the 120. Now, let's do the 180. Now, you might have heard that sander work a little bit on that grit. If you hear that sander bog down like that, that's a true sign that you're doing something wrong. So you want that sander to be able to operate smooth and free without you weighing it down. If you put your body weight on it any more than the weight of your hand, that's what you're going to get. And if you saw at the beginning, the very first stage, even with the 80 grit, I operated this machine one-handed from a distance. So proper social distancing with the sander, I guess you could say. So anyway, there is our sanding operation. And I'm going to put a little mark here on there that is bad, even though we will clearly see that when we put stain on. So that is proper sanding technique. Nice, smooth, easy, consistent flow. And there we go. I need something to put here. I'll put this down so it doesn't keep getting down in the dust. So is there any questions on technique or what we've done so far? No questions. Well, that makes life easy. So I suppose we're ready to stain.
You do respect now?
Yeah. Not a problem. So we have the, oh, look at that. That's perfect. Let's see if we can't get a close up of that here in a minute before I put stain on. So what you're looking to do, if you're working, well, ideally that's what you want. You want that to reflect in your direction. Because like here, I can't see a thing because it's not showing me. What I typically do is I'll have this thing low and I'll look down through here and look for flaws. And you can see a lot of swirl marks over here, a lot of swirl marks there on the good side. Very clean. There's a couple little issues on this corner, but that's sometimes easily found. So anyway, as I look this over, it's easy to see when you're not blind. All right, so let's get this stain, see what we look like.
Scott Cassie asked while you're doing that, what about curves surface?
Curved surfaces, if it's an outside curve, keeping your pads flat. We also offer auxiliary pads that are made of a more of a cushiony foam. If you're doing contours inside or outside, those auxiliary interface pads are fantastic options because that will allow you to follow the contour more effectively. If you're trying to flatten it, then that's a different story.
And this is the good side.
My mama said both of my sides were good. She said I didn't have a bad side. Yeah, it usually is. Especially for people that know me. Got the hack over here finishing. I should have had the finishing gear.
I'll do the crappy side. Sorry, the improperly sated side. All sides are good sides.
All right. So that.
Tilt the doors and I'll put the light on.
There's a couple little swirl marks there, but not too bad. Oh, got brown stuff on there.
Now he wants us to demo on Mike's rough spots.
On Mike's rough spots.
I'm a fat man. There ain't no rough spots. It's all curvy bit.
All smooth.
Unless we know.
Sorry, I didn't want to take that joy of staining from Michael.
Sure.
Like you've done that before.
Once or twice.
Pretty gnarly looking pad you got there. Wise color choice.
I wanted something with a little bit of black in it because that always gives you all of your problems. Having any kind of black pigment in a finishing product and you put it on the wood will definitely excite all of your swirl marks and everything. But I didn't want it to be super dark. You wouldn't see anything either.
All right. Put the lid on there before I knock it off. Create some problems. So anyway, there's much more obvious swirl marks along the surface. You can see swirl marks the entire length over here on this side. You can see it real heavy right there. Right here, there's some kind of gouge. I clearly didn't get that out when I was sanding it. And that's the whole idea of your first grit, is you're moving any surface imperfections. And every grit following, all that you're doing is cleaning up the scratches left from your first grit. So, this is a clear sign of major issues that would not pass most finishing department standards. This, I see a couple little issues, but for the most part, for a quick knockout, that's pretty good. I would have typically spent a little more time on my first grit so that the rest succession and grit range would have been much better. So anyway, that's proper sanding technique, trying to get the swirls minimized when you're sanding. And you'll notice that the heavy pressure on the last pass that I did is typical for a lot of people for every grit they use. So minimal pressure, making sure you're covering the whole surface multiple times. That's key to proper sanding technique.
So a couple of things in the video that we did that most people probably typically don't do, other than, so we use the router pad. If you find yourself pushing down with the sander and then you're trying to push down because you feel it vibrating back, the vibration from the sander is getting transmitted into the wood and then into your work surface, and it's coming back. So what you're really fighting is the vibration. So a work mat, I think they're like $12. These are fantastic for sanding because you notice that a lot of things didn't move on the table even when you push down. But if you did push down, then everything will start to move on the table. And I see a lot of people who are out there, they're doing the videos and everything. A work mat will really save you a lot of fatigue too. You're not fighting that vibration, not wearing your hands out. One other thing Chris did with the Festool is that he was mostly back here holding it, letting the weight of the motor and just the actual assembly here be the weight of pressure. I find a lot of people that will push down and then the sander starts to jump. So what do? Your natural inclination is to push harder. You don't want to, just the way of the sander, like you said. If you want to make sure that your sanding pad is actually orbiting correctly, that the machine itself is working properly, make yourself a mark on there. In this case, this is a white pad, so I took a dark Sharpie and I put that on there. If it's a dark pad, you can get a silver Sharpie, anything, even white out, anything at all that can show you that this pad is spinning. Because whenever you push down hard enough, you'll see here, well, I don't know if you can, so you'll notice that mark disappears, but if you can see the mark or the mark sitting still and just oscillating at that point, you're no longer random orbiting, you're just oscillating the disc side to side. So those are some helpful things on what we did today that maybe people didn't know about as well. Anything else you got?
I don't know. So along with all the good abrasives that we have a long lifetime of experience sanding, finishing, and so between the two of us, we love woodworking, and we just want to share as much as we can. It's not always about sandpaper, but it is. So the right sandpaper for the right job, and make sure it's a quality sandpaper. I had the horrible task, and I sent Mike a text yesterday of a picture. I was forced to go buy some crap hardware sandpaper, and I won't name brand names. But I just texted him and said, I think I'm sick. And it took me so many more sheets to do this job, but it was something I had to finish, and it was the only thing close. And if I was in my shop, I would have had 20, but I wasn't anywhere near my shop. So anyway, the right sandpaper is ideal. The sample pack is a perfect option. Look into that. It gives you a taste of what we have to offer. You might find something you like better for your different species or for your different applications. So
yeah, so woodworkingshop.com, just simply search the word samplers, and all the samplers we have in rolls, in discs, everything will come up on that. So you can at least get a kind of a taste of what we have sample wise.
Yep. And if you got questions, call us 800-228-0000.
That's right. And Eddie, we are in the Hickory store today.
Yep.
But tomorrow, we'll see. Later on today, you'll be in Winston, and then Friday you'll be in Cary.
No, I'll be here today, but I'll be in Cary on Friday.
Okay, so you'll be remotely going to Cary, and then we'll check out that store while we're there.
I guess that would be live on location.
Live on location.
Yeah, I've always wanted to say that.
Via satellite. Old school. Anyways, thank you very much for tuning in. I think it was almost like 30 minutes worth of good sanding information. Hopefully it was helpful. If there's anything that was confusing, anything you have questions on, anything you find yourself doing, please leave a comment below and just kind of let us know, because we see it a lot. We get a lot of calls on it. You know, I'm getting these swirl marks. What kind of sandpaper you're using, what's your technique, and we'll pretty much get down to swirl marks are usually improper pressure, and then the machine's not working properly. So,
and if you think I did it wrong, call me up, prove me wrong.
Yeah, do a video and prove them wrong. That would be even better. Chris, you're not doing it right. I want to see how many people out there. By the way, this is a random orbit sander, not an angle grinder. Leave it flat.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in. I am Mike Z.
I'm Chris.
And we will see you guys next time.
Be safe.